The 2025 Hyundai IONIQ 5N is one of the vehicles I've been most excited to review this whole year, and for good reason. It takes the electric vehicle to new heights and elevates the drama and the excitement of an electric vehicle to places it's never been before, with not only simulated sounds, but also simulated manual shifts. You also can change the torque distribution. There's launch control. There's just so many fun things here, and I'm really excited to try all that fun stuff out in this video. And in this video, I'll also be covering the exterior, the interior, talking about all the different components of how it drives, as well as the kind of efficiency you can expect, and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition. But as far as the styling here on the 5N, I think they did a really good job on it. This white color probably doesn't do it the most justice. You can get like a bright orange, there's a matte baby blue, some really fun colors, but even in white here, I think it's a really cool look. I already adored the looks of the IONIQ 5 in general. The regular ones look great. And for the N here, they've nicely amped up the aggression. And because of that change to the styling, you have some new dimensions now. So this vehicle is almost a full inch lower than before. It's also 3.2 inches longer. Most of that is thanks to that big rear diffuser there in the back, which looks awesome. And it's also 2 inches wider thanks to the wider wheels and tires and the flared out fenders here on the N version. And I think that looks so cool and takes what is already a very cool looking car and just makes it even meaner. Going down to the sides, you still have the pop out door handles there, and the orange stripe here at the bottom, which is a little different than other N models in the past that have had a red stripe. So it's, I guess, a new thing here for the electrified Ns potentially. And then going out to the back there, you have that large rear wing that's been added on. You also have a rear wiper, which I believe is an addition for all 2025 IONIQ 5s. A great addition, one of the big deficiencies of the pre-refresh version. Great that you have a rear wiper now on these for anyone that lives in any kind of climate where you have anything that needs cleaned off that rear window there. It's great you have that now. And just a subtle little N badge there on the back, but honestly, outside of that colored stripe there at the bottom, it's fairly subtle for the insane performance this thing has of 641 horsepower. And yeah, from every single angle though, this thing just looks awesome. The interior of the IONIQ 5N nicely jazzes up the regular IONIQ 5 interior with some extra sporty hardware. So first off, these seats are one of the main standouts. So you have these new N seats, and these are a little more comfortable than the seats you might be used to in like the Veloster N or the Elantra N. And they're really good at hugging you in. There's no adjustable bolstering or anything, unfortunately, but they are heated and ventilated, which is a first for an N vehicle. So it's great that you have the ventilation here. And you have the Alcantara, but it's perforated, thankfully. So perforated Alcantara also helps with the cooling in addition to the actual cooling function. But they just are, at least for my body type, perfectly contoured. You just have manual controls here, but yeah, really great seats actually, I'm happy to report. And the steering wheel is also fantastic. It's this new N wheel unique to the 5N, and it has a great 9-3 grip, little 10 and 2 notches, but I love all the buttons and the way they're arranged here with a drive mode button, and then your two N controllers down here, and then you also have the N Grin boost button here, which gives you 10 seconds of an overboost kind of feature. You also have paddle shifters here, which are actually useful in addition to just doing the regen, which is a nice thing you can do in regular Hyundai EVs, but you also now can do paddle shifting, which we'll demonstrate lots in this video. But a really great steering wheel, great looks, and just I love it. Next is the gauge cluster here. So you still have the same like 12.3 inch double screens here, and the gauge cluster one is great. Now in the regular normal modes, it's going to be basically the same as any other Hyundai EV, nothing special there. But whenever you go into the N modes, then you will see a really cool array of information there, including your battery temperature, your motor temps, and also, the speed readout in the middle there. And if you're in the manual shifting mode, it'll show you a digital tach, which has a nearly 8,000 RPM red line, supposedly. We will try that out. But, and just your usual information there on the right-hand side. But really attractive gauge is really cool to see, and it's nice you have the little readouts there at the top for what modes you're in whenever you have everything customized. Coming over to the center here though, you have this normal 12.3 inch infotainment system, and it gets the new software here for 2025 that we've seen in some other brand new Hyundais, and that means that it thankfully has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and so really happy to have that. The other stuff all works the same as any other Hyundai product. My one complaint with this system is that whenever you're listening to music in satellite radio there in particular, it won't show you the actual song track or artist unless you bring up this whole thing that takes up the entire screen. Otherwise, whenever you're on the radio page or you're on the home page, it's not going to show you the song name. a minor annoyance, but seeing just the album artwork is nice, but I want to see what the actual name of the song is. So that's the only gripe there. Otherwise, everything else works totally fine in my opinion. Coming down, you have your familiar row of controls if you're used to any other IONIQ 5, but it's a really nice, simple area here. Just a few hard buttons, a few of these capacitive touch ones, and all works totally fine. They did reconfigure the storage area here though for 2025. So up top here, you have a wireless charging pad and your hookups here, and a nice little main bin there. You also have another USB-C jack and a regular power outlet a little bit lower, but then you have this massive area. And in other IONIQ 5s, this used to slide. There was like a drawer kind of thing. You don't have any of that anymore, but I appreciate that because it means that this whole thing, with these USB jacks and all that, are now raised off the floor. On the pre-refresh IONIQ 5, they're all buried in the footwell, and you had to be under the dashboard basically, like you're hot wiring a car in order to plug in your phone. Now it's right within easy reach, so I love that. But you still have a nice huge bin here with these cup holders that can retract away if you don't need them, and you also have the center armrest, which is pretty firm, honestly. I'm not sure why they made that so hard, but anyway, you open that up and you will see an extra little bit of covered space there if you want that. There's also nice large pockets in the doors. One other minor complaint though with this interior is that it's very dark. The entire thing is black. You have the light blue stitching and one little strip of light blue there on the passenger side, but otherwise the door is just this giant sea of black vinyl, and you have no moonroof, so it's all dark as far as that goes. I just would appreciate a little more color, a little more excitement to match the exciting exterior here, and you just don't really have much of that. But moving on to the back seat here in the 5N, it's again pretty much the same, aside from again the center console area being a different configuration, so you don't have that extra storage space there for those rear occupants like you got in the pre-refresh IONIQ 5, but you do have the power outlets there and a full down center armrest for them, and tons of legroom. I mean, I think these end seats also might give you even more legroom than the thicker regular seats for an IONIQ 5, but I mean, I have, I don't know, probably 4 inches of legroom to spare there. Really a generous amount of space. You'll have no issues with space in this vehicle whatsoever. It's better than some compact SUVs, I think, honestly. And then cargo space is also really good. It's pretty wide, pretty long, and beneath the floor there, you will see some little, oddly shaped bins. You can fit some stuff, and even in the forward part there of the cargo area, you can slide that cover back and see some extra little bit of space there to throw a few knickknacks in. But going to be totally practical. Now, one thing is with the N version here, you did lose the front trunk, which was very small and pretty much useless anyway, but there's no hope of anything now because they just have a little engine cover kind of thing, and you can see your electric motors, which is kind of cool. But let's turn it on and go for a drive. So the N's here from Hyundai now have this new black key fob with some buttons there. This one unfortunately has it taped over, but there is an N badge there, which is unique obviously to the N key, and really nice to have that. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, push button start, so you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the start button here, and it turns right on. And you might be able to hear, once all the dinging stops, I'll even turn down the climate here so you can really hear. There is this rumble that almost sounds like a Boxer rumble at idle, and that is because I have this N sound profile thing going. You can turn that off and have this be completely silent if you want, but in my opinion it's pretty cool how it kind of rumbles here at idle and just gives you the little sample of the kind of drama you'll be experiencing whenever you drive this vehicle. Alright, so setting off here in the IONIQ 5N. So the first thing you notice, well, I'm just starting off in normal mode here, and outside of the little pedestrian warning sound that it makes, it's totally silent, and if you want to just have a sedate experience, you can have that. And that's actually notable because every other N is going to have, a louder exhaust, even with its active exhaust. And, any other sporty vehicle, yes, that has a quiet mode sometimes, but it's never totally quiet like you can have this. And so, it gives you that great adjustability depending on your mood. Sometimes you maybe don't want to have everything feel like you're at a rock concert, and that's, okay. And so it's really great, just the breadth of capability this has as far as just how aggressive or non-aggressive you can have it be. I also really love that you have a slight vibration through the steering wheel too, which helps us to feel a little more alive, and I really love that even whenever you aren't driving quickly. But another thing that's always been good about the 5s here is the great visibility. Nice big windshield, great view out of the sides, view out of the back is really good, nice and easy to drive. You have parking sensors and cameras and all that to help you out. Other things though, the one thing that really stood out to me, I was expecting this thing on these wheels and this more aggressive N suspension setup, that it was going to have a stiff ride even in the soft mode. thankfully, this is super comfortable. I would argue it's almost as comfortable as a regular IONIQ 5, and I've had no complaints so far in my little bit of driving here with the ride quality. It's just like totally fine, and I'm really happy to say that. I thought this was going to be a little bit of a compromise from a ride standpoint, and it's not. You can daily drive this in total comfort, go on long drives. It's not going to be tiring. I'd say this is probably the most comfortable N they've ever made whenever you have it in that soft mode, which is great. Another thing they did fantastically well is the brake blending. This has really natural, normal feeling brakes that feel exactly the way you want them to feel. There's no artificialness to them. There's no weird regen feeling, even though it is doing, you know, regenning and all that whenever you have it in the appropriate modes for that. But it's totally seamless, like perfect brake blending, and that's something a lot of other companies still struggle to do well these days, and Hyundai has mastered it clearly. Other things here, throttle response is really great. Again, feels exactly the way you want it to feel. Not overboard, not too dead, just right, and just really well done. Steering weight also here in the regular normal mode feels really great. It has a little bit of heft to it, so it feels like it's connected to something, but not so heavy that, you know, you're doing an arm workout just trying to turn the steering wheel. So really nice as far as that goes. Another thing about the ride quality, like this road right here, you know, has a little bit of a rougher paved surface and some bumps and stuff, and this vehicle feels so solid and well put together. And I think part of that is because the N version in particular has extra bracing in the chassis. It has extra welds, extra adhesives, all those types of things that make this feel really stiff. And, you know, as far as, you know, if you're going to beat on this thing on track or something, it's going to feel really well put together. And so that just translates to also a very polished feel out here on the road. And I think that extra rigidity is probably part of what allowed them to go a little softer on these dampers while still having great handling here. But other things here. So one interesting thing, so we will go ahead and just go into the N1 mode here, just to get the sounds, so you can sample some of the sounds. And the interesting thing is, there's manual shifting here, but if you don't do the manual shifting, it just constantly is going with this, like, it always sounds like it needs an upshift, and it's not doing it. It's kind of annoying, to be completely honest. And if you go to the other modes, there's a bunch of different sounds here you can try out. So we will go ahead. That's another thing, is some of the stuff's buried in the screens a little bit, you know, unfortunate that you have to poke around to do some of this stuff. But there's also evolution, which is really loud, and it's pretty surprising whenever you're in manual mode. So we'll try that in manual mode in a little bit. But this will be like a futuristic, and there's also this one that's called Supersonic that's inspired by a fighter jet. And it's all thankfully being played through a Bose stereo here you get in the 5N, so it's going to be very high quality. There's also two speakers on the outside, and they're supposed to give you a little bit of, you know, an audible signature to this vehicle whenever it's driving by. It's cool, but it's not going to be super loud. I think the thing I love about these sounds, though, is that it gives you, if you want it, again, you can just turn it off, but if you want those sounds, you know, it gives you almost like a windows down experience without having to have the windows down. So if you're someone who, you know, you live in a place where you have to have the windows up and have the air on all the time because it's so hot or whatever, or in the winter, you can have kind of that same window down experience with the windows up, which is just one little thing I wasn't expecting to appreciate, but so far I have been appreciating that, as it's very hot here and I've been having the air on most of the time. But because of how this sound just is constantly droning and just can get annoying after a while, to me, if you're going to have the sounds on, you got to be in manual mode all the time, which is a little bit unfortunate. I was hoping, you know, they were going to tune the sound better so that it wasn't just this constant drone. But I'm going to leave it in the N Custom 1 mode that I have here, which has all the acceleration stuff in its sportiest setting. I'm going to go ahead and put it into the manual shifting mode, and I'm not going to do full-blown N or the launch or anything just yet. We'll do that in a minute. But let's turn down onto this back road and just see how it does when we just stomp on it in manual mode. And here we go. It like bounces off the rev limiter, and this thing is fast. And you can hear when you let off the gas there, it gives you some little like crackles and pops on an overrun kind of thing. But there it is. But it feels like a real manual, you know, transmission. They modeled this, both the sound and the feel, off the N launcher and a dual clutch, but it is so perfect with the way that it simulates gear ratios. It has 8 simulated gear ratios, and it is so much fun just the level of immersion with how well, you know, you get the torque cuts whenever you're upshifting and downshifting and everything that it does, it feels exactly like a gas car. If you would have blindfolded me, I mean, the sound's a little digital, but as far as the feel goes, you could have told me I was in, you know, a dual clutch Elantra N or something that's really fast, and I would have believed you. Like, it really feels that good. But as far as the power numbers goes, it's of course dual motors, and it does a peak of 641 horsepower whenever you have the N-Grin boost mode on here for 10 seconds. Otherwise, you can have 601 horsepower. It's 568 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 is claimed by Hyundai in 3.3 seconds. Car and Driver managed to get a 3-second flat 0 to 60. But to do that, they had to go into a drag mode, which warmed up the battery for like 20 minutes, they said, and then was able to give them that proper launch. So in all the perfect conditions, you know, 3 seconds. Otherwise, though, I'd say something in the, you know, mid 3-second range, still very fast, still very, very impressive. Quarter mile, by the way, whenever they're in that drag mode, was 11.1 seconds. So almost a 10-second car here. Very, very impressive. Top speed is, I think, over 160 miles per hour. Very impressive as far as all that goes as well. But even let's do some more manual shifts here. Lower speeds. You get those, you know, burps on the upshift. Little crackles. And it's just, I mean, even the downshift, it's like you feel like a clutch engaging that's not there. It's fantastic. It really is. I'm so happy that they executed this so well. And I've been having a blast. I've only driven this vehicle less than 20 miles so far. I just drove a couple errands slowly last night to reserve my first acceleration. But even just paddle shifting around, I was just laughing doing 30 miles an hour paddle shifting around because it's just so realistic and impressive. But anyway, coming up some corners here I always take. I'm going to go into full-blown N mode now and put the suspension in its stiffer setting. We have the ESC in sport mode now. And diving in here, and man, this thing handles so well too. So it really disguises its weight. You know, it weighs you know, in the upper 4,000 range here. You feel the weight a little bit, but not too bad, honestly. And it's just really impressive as far as the handling goes. There's so many different modes and things that are going on behind the scenes here to help give you an impressive handling experience. But the main hard points are you have 275 wide Pirelli P0 EV tires. It's a special EV blend of that tire. And 275s wide all around is impressive. That's a jump over the 255s you typically get on an IONIQ 5, which are already, you know, pretty wide for the segment, but this goes even wider here. And really punches you out of the corner nicely. And so as far as all of the other hard components, so you have some 15.7-inch rotors in the front, 4-piston calipers to help slow you down. There, I believe, 15.2-inch rotors in the rear. Lots of braking, and honestly, I'm surprised you only have 1-piston calipers in the rear. That's unlike a track car. Typically, track cars have at least, you know, 2 pistons or more there for the rear brakes. But part of the reason why I think they can get away with that is because you have regen braking that's really strong here in this before you even need those friction brakes. And they said that you can even do some regen braking whenever you're in full ABS, like stopping mode. So I mean, it's like really strong. I think it said you can do like 0.6 G of deacceleration just from regen braking alone. And there's also a mode in here so you can do like a 1-pedal drive thing that kind of immediately does aggressive regenning. So when you're on track or something, it can really help to tuck in the nose and give you some fantastic turn in and all that. I'm not going to be able to try that here because again, it's set up for really aggressive kind of driving, not spirited backroad stuff like this. But and I also love that, you know, they didn't go overboard with the volume on these sounds too. You know, we have it just kind of humming away nicely in the background here, but it's not overboard. But I'm going to try out some sounds here. I'm going to go back to the N custom mode, and we're going to try out the Evolution sound here. That one's really loud, honestly. Sounds pretty cool, though. Almost like a rally car, in my opinion. And then there's the supersonic one to sound like a jet. And try that out here. That was the most surprising one. It's like an afterburner, like explosion or something whenever you're in that one. So if you want to pretend like you can drive a fighter jet on the road, that's probably going to be the ticket here with this one. All right, but we're going to try to do a launch here very briefly, and I'm going to do the N-Grin boost mode, and here we go. Launch control, boost. Wow, that's fast. Woo, yeah, that is fun. man, it really bangs you into, into acceleration with that mode. Man, oh man, that is impressive whenever you have everything, again, no gearing, just it doing its own thing. It is really cool, and again, can be in complete silence here if you want it, which is the way we have the N mode set up currently. But then, we're just like dipping into the gas right now. I'll do the boost mode again here, and that gives you, this 10 seconds where it says it's boosting, and it's impressive. Honestly, it accelerates so fast that I was getting on the brakes, and I feel like I could have used even a little more grab from the brakes than I was getting. Maybe that was just because it was, again, in that boost mode, and assuming I was going to, continue to step on it. But this thing is a wild ride. So we'll skip the sounds for a minute here and just be in N mode and just see what it does on its own whenever I'm not trying to manually shift. So then, I mean, it is just it's impressive. I mean, you hear just all the usual EV noises, but you don't really hear much of anything. So it's kind of a surreal experience whenever you're attacking a back road in complete silence. But you can do it that way if you'd like. Now, as far as other handling stuff here for these, so one of the really cool tricks is that you have an ability to adjust the torque. So you can go in here with this torque distribution setting, and you can have it either 100% front, 100% rear, however you want it. And I'm kind of nervous to do the 100% rear in a vehicle with 641 electric horses, but we're going to go ahead and try out the forward one. I just want to see how much this can feel like a hot hatch if we have all the power going to the front supposedly here, and see how it does. And to illustrate this, I'm going to be having the wheel turned and stomp on it. Here we go. Yep, it spins the front wheels. Amazingly though, there isn't much torque steer, so it did a good job of giving me a front wheel drive feeling here, and I'm sure I don't know if it actually can put 100% to the front, but you can have it feel like a hot hatch here. And I'm going to actually try and get a little bit of space here, because this thing is so quick that you catch up to traffic very easily. But I'm going to try a few more corners here in the front heavy mode all the way. Yeah, okay, it wanted to kind of push a little bit there because of me having all the power go to the front. Wow, it is so cool. So if you want to have a wild front wheel drive thing and have like a Civic Type R with double the horsepower, you can have that, which is so cool. And there is a full rear wheel drive mode, so you can have 100% of the power going to the rear, and that will also open up the drift optimizer that you have, which will enable you to do some better drifts than you might be able to do on your own. And it does give you less assistance from the nannies and all that to allow you to kick the back end out on this thing if you want. And if you need even more help kicking the back end out, there's also a torque kick drift thing, which is basically like a clutch kick that it can do. But I'm going to try just a little bit more rear bias here. We're in sport mode, so I'm going to take it a little bit easy, because I've heard these are very tail happy whenever you play around with it. So I'm going to approach this with respect. But so we have 80% of the power going to the rear. Even there, I felt that it was a little twitchy in the back there. Another tight corner that often provokes some stuff. Okay, yeah, I can feel the limits of grip there, and that I can easily exceed those limits of grip if I so wished. So yeah, it's really cool. Again, some of this stuff, there's a bunch of warning messages and stuff about the drift optimizer, and you're responsible if you screw it up. And same thing with the torque distribution. They say you should be doing it as a skilled driver in a controlled environment and all that kind of stuff. And it's also interesting, some of these things have a bunch of conditions. Like, you have to have the traction control setting in its right mode, you have to have this and that, and like there's all these conditions that need to be met before it lets you go into some of this stuff. It's kind of surprising they don't just automatically put you into those correct settings, because you would think that it's all software. It could just be like, I want this, and it's like, okay, well, that means you have no traction control, and that means you have this and that. But instead, this makes you like go through like a tutorial of like, here's the buttons you need to press in order to enable this mode. Just seems like an obtuse way of doing things that doesn't need to be that way. But anyway, I'm not going to complain anymore, because it's still awesome. And by the way, if you don't want to manually shift all the time, you can just hit this button, and it still will give you the simulated shifts and the simulated 8 gears, but without you having to paddle shift everywhere. So if you want to just do that, then the only way you go into manual shifting is if you start pulling the paddles yourself. But otherwise, you can just have it be in this N mode, and it does hold gears a little longer than you might like. So that's where you might want to take over with the manual component instead. But it is nice that you can have this just be like an automatic dual clutch kind of thing. And I think it's actually just going down that hill, just trying to kind of engine brake. Again, I'm using all these gasoline terms for a vehicle that doesn't actually do any of those things, but it simulates all that stuff so well. Gives me quick downshifts, crackles and pops. Man, this thing is, I love this. Hyundai, thank you for having the guts to do this. This is just, it adds so much more fun. This is, I would say, probably the most fun I've ever had in an electric car. And yes, it's all fake, but you know, there's fake sound assistance in some gas-powered cars. And like, actually Car and Driver did a very good article on this video, or on this car. I will leave a link in the video description if you want to read Car and Driver's article. The way they summed up the driving experience, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically they use the analogy of like riding Space Mountain at Disney World. Like, you don't hop on that ride and say, just so everyone knows we're not actually going to space. No, you hop on, and you're like, yay, we're going to space, and it's just this fun ride, and it's woohoo, and then and then you're done. But you know, you're just enjoying the ride, and that's the way it is here in this. If you're someone who only watches documentaries, you don't enjoy a good movie that requires suspension of disbelief, this isn't going to be the car for you. But if you're someone who can, you know, just say, hey, look, I want to have an electric hot hatch, but I want to have some of the fun I had in my gas-powered hot hatches back in the day, you can have that here in this. And it's still fun, it's still thrilling, and I'd say the most engaging electric driving experience I've ever had. And we'll see if other companies can match this or beat this in the future. But again, I just respect Hyundai so much for bothering to put this stuff in, and not just put it in as like a, you know, concession, but actually do it really well, to the point that all I want to do is drive around this vehicle with the fake sounds going, with the fake power shifting going, and I'm just having a blast in some super fast hot hatch that, again, I have to remind myself I'm in an EV. I actually have to remind myself of that because it's such a convincing experience. And this really shows that, you know, it doesn't have to be this, you know, end of the road kind of thing with EVs. We can have this crackling and popping going down the highway in an EV, and, you know, you can still have all the same fun in my mind. I'm not having any less fun in this than I've had in Elantra N. I'm actually having way more fun than in an Elantra N, or anything else for that matter. I think it's the most fun I've had all year driving a car. And so, to me, this gives us, at least me, so much hope of what an electrified future can be like, and that it can still be just as much fun. I absolutely adore them for this. But anyway, so now we're back in the normal mode, and now look, total silence, cruising on the highway. And so as far as my usual highway comments here, you know, this vehicle has all the usual Hyundai safety tech stuff. It has adaptive cruise control as standard, the lane keep assist. I believe it's highway drive assist that you have here in this. And so, you know, it's going to do the automated, you know, lane keeping a little bit. It's still a hands-on experience, but on the highway, you know, it can be a nice extra thing to help with, you know, fatigue. And I'm going to actually just try out, because sometimes these, adaptive cruise systems from Hyundai aren't the best with the lane keep. So we have a gentle corner here coming up, and let's see how it handles this. So we do have cars around us, so I'm going to still babysit it very closely here, but doing a pretty good job. In the past, some Hyundai systems have not been great about actually holding the lines and would go over the lines, but at least on this section of highway here, it's doing a pretty good job. This will also come down to the kind of you know, area you live in, if you have windy highways around you or not. In southwestern Pennsylvania, we have lots of them, and it's probably the most challenging kind of you know, situation for this kind of a system. But it handled that totally fine. You know, it's nice that you have that if you want it, but then, you know, after you've had your fun on a back road, you want to just chill and relax. Total silence, cruising on the highway with all the assistance you want, with a Bose stereo playing, a nice comfortable ride still. It just does everything so well, and I think that's one of the things that I really love about this vehicle and any vehicle, whenever it can do the best of all the worlds kind of thing. It's something not a lot of vehicles can do, especially performance vehicles, and the fact that this can do that so well is really, really impressive. And so, yeah, so that's my first initial impressions here on the IONIQ 5, and thanks to Hyundai, I will have this vehicle for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place with probably lots of laughing, lots of smiles, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world efficiency, as well as my thoughts on the pricing, how it compares to the competition, and anything else that I noticed here during my week of driving the IONIQ 5, and I can't wait. So I've been driving the IONIQ 5N for a week now, and oh man, I've really fallen in love with this car. I didn't think that my expectations could honestly be blown, because my expectations were already so high in this thing. I just was so excited for this vehicle all year, and it's one of those rare instances where it actually not only meets my very high expectations, but also exceeds them. And honestly, like, this car is addictive. And this is pretty rare for me, especially these days, to have a car where I'm jonesing for the next drive, and I really wasn't this. I was really trying to find every excuse, and you know, if a day had gone by and I hadn't driven it yet that day, I'm like, man, I gotta find a way to get out into that IONIQ 5N and go for it again, because it's just so addictive. It really is just that much fun, and I love this thing. I just was using the paddle shifters the entire week. I was having the fake sounds on all week. For anyone that's curious, at least in manual mode here, it didn't get old. It wasn't like some party trick that I got tired of. I always was wanting to continue to use it. The burps on the upshift and stuff never got old for me. Again, maybe in months or years, maybe it would. I don't know. But personally, I love that stuff. And I also love that it's only for me. You know, I'm not doing this and having everyone in the same zip code hear me do it. You know, it's your own personal little fake internal combustion concert. And as someone who likes to fly under the radar a little bit, I kind of like that it's pretty much silent on the outside, but you have all the rowdiness on the inside that you want. It's very courteous in that manner, I guess you can say. But anyway, aside from, you know, me just being obsessed with this thing all week, there are two little takeaways that I had that are, I guess, feedback. The first is that I really wish you could get a moonroof in this, or, you know, the glass roof you can get in any other IONIQ 5, because it just would open up this interior so it isn't, again, so dark feeling. If I'm being nitpicky, I mean, I don't care. I'm having so much fun. I'm not paying attention to what's above me, but it would be a nice thing to just offer, I think, for people who don't need to have the lightest weight, since this is an EV after all, and someone who, you know, just wants to have a little more creature comforts, it'd be nice to have that roof there. I also just wish that, since this is so well done with this manual shifting, I know you can get it in the GB60, but I'd love to see regular IONIQ 5s adopt this, and maybe they will. I hope so, because, you know, as much as I love 641 horsepower on tap all the time, I think, you know, having the fake sounds and the fake shifting in a regular IONIQ 5 with its 300 some odd horsepower would really increase the fun component of that car as well. And like, I honestly hope that every EV within Hyundai and Kia and Genesis all get fake sounds of some sort that are this well done, and, you know, fake shifting that's this well done as well. Because I think that honestly, you know, and especially with how expensive this vehicle is, which I'll get to in a second, you know, if you could have this same kind of fun in a regular IONIQ, for those who don't need Nürburgring attacking handling and performance, you know, I hope that they offer that stuff and it kind of trickles down to the other EVs, you know, sooner rather than later. But yeah, those are really the only two little takeaways. Now, as far as the last couple of things I mentioned here, as far as my efficiency and then pricing and how it compares to the competition. For efficiency, I'm actually kind of surprised too with my efficiency. I've been getting 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. And I mean, I would say something that's this size, typically I'd maybe be getting around 3, maybe even a little bit more here since we're in the middle of the summer. So it's by no means impressive efficiency, but for 641 horsepower, and, you know, the wide tires this has too, the aggressive cooling and aero and all that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of drag here, and to me, 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour, for as much fun as I've been having to getting on this pretty hard and enjoying all that power too. I haven't been hypermiling this thing and I'm still getting 2.7. I thought I'd be getting a little bit worse, honestly. So again, low expectations there, but I'm pleasantly surprised with the efficiency, in my opinion, as well. And I was so excited by the driving experience that I forgot to mention the actual battery info. So it runs an 84 kilowatt hour battery, slightly bigger than the 77.4 kilowatt hour battery that regular IONIQ 5s had previously, but despite this bigger battery, you only get 221 miles of range. That's of course due once again to all the power, wide tires, big wheels, and the extra aerodynamic drag. The good thing is that these eGMP vehicles from Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis all charge very quickly, with a 238 kilowatt peak charge rate that provides a 10% to 80% charge in just 18 minutes. So even if your stops are a little more frequent on a road trip, they should be short stops. But the last thing to mention here, though, is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing goes, right now in the summer of 2024, you're going to be paying a price premium for this, but I would argue that this has higher performance than any of the other competitors that this competes against. But, you know, it's not cheap. These start at $67,500 roughly. This one, as tested, is just over $68,000 due to the white paint that's a little bit of an upcharge and the carpeted floor mats. Those are the two things that push it over to 68 there. But it's also relative, because if you think about just in the enthusiast performance four-door space in general. 68 grand also gets you like an Audi RS3, which is obviously a very special, awesome experience. I love that thing. I adore it. 5-cylinder turbo motor is magical in its own way, but it's way slower, way less horsepower. I mean, 0 to 60 and stuff might be close, but I mean, that has what, 400 horsepower versus this does an extra almost 250 more horsepower. It's just a more extreme experience. And so, you know, when you look at it in that context, I think that this is actually very well priced. Obviously, it's not an Audi, it's not a luxury vehicle, but you have, you know, heated and cooled seats, you have, you know, heated steering wheel, all those like creature comforts that you get in a luxury vehicle. And I'd say it's, you know, pretty quiet and refined and all that as well. So, you know, in that kind of a context, I think even at MSRP, this to me is worth every penny. It's that good anyway. But then whenever you compare it to the competition, it depends on exactly what your priorities are as far as how the value proposition shakes out, especially right now, because first off, the big one that we have to talk about right off the bat is the Tesla Model Y performance. Those, you know, it's the older styling. They haven't gotten the Highland upgrades like we see on the Model 3 yet. And as such, there's big discounts. You can get a Model Y performance, which has still a 3.5 seconds 0 to 60, slightly slower than this. But if straight line performance in an EV is all you care about in a crossover, Model Y performance is like 45 grand after the tax credit that it's eligible for. This, by the way, is not eligible for any tax credits outside of the leasing tax credits, since there's the leasing loophole here, at least again in 2024, but there's no purchase discount like you get on the Tesla there. And so, I mean, they're 45 grand. We're talking a full more than $20,000 discount for the Tesla, which again is still very good in a straight line. Now, I will say the Model Y performance, I've never even reviewed one or driven one, so I can't say how it feels, but what I know is that it, you know, doesn't have as wide of tires, doesn't have as big of brakes, doesn't have, you know, nearly the suspension stuff, none of the extra cooling stuff like this has. I mean, this is set up to be a track car. The Model Y performance is not. It's just that simple. So it just comes down to how hardcore you plan on, you know, pushing your electric crossover and how much handling you want. If you don't care about handling, sure, I can understand the appeal for the Model Y, and the discount is very big. Another one that kind of falls in the same category is the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT, and now GT Performance for 2024. That actually does 700 pound-feet of torque now, so more torque than this, but yet that has a almost over a half-second slower quarter-mile time. It's a little bit slower for the 0 to 60 time compared to this, and that also, again, has skinnier tires. It does have bigger brakes and stuff, but again, handling is just not going to be as good as this. It's not going to be dynamic, and it's also, again, none of these vehicles are even close to as engaging as this is with the sounds and the shifting and all that versus everything else. It's just a mostly silent affair where you mash the gas, you say, "Wee, I went fast," and that's the end of the story. They're so much more one-dimensional than this is, and also, again, lower performing. I'm sure this would leave everything for dead on track, and so, you know, Mach-E GT, you know, now that it's got some revisions and you got that, you know, extra power for 2024, there might not be as many discounts on those, but MSRP wise, there still is even a slight discount there compared to this, you know, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, there are a lot of discounts out there for Mach-E, so there's a good chance that you could get, you know, a nice discount there as well. And then the other big elephant in the room is the EV6 GT from Kia, which is the same platform as this, the same great fast recharge times, which, by the way, is another perk of this, is the fast recharge times over the Tesla and the Mach-E, especially the Mach-E is much slower recharging than this is. But, you know, with EV6 GT, that's is pretty close on power. I mean, this has definitely got an extra, what, about 50 horsepower or so over that. So this is faster for sure. This also, again, has more handling improvements, more cooling improvements. But the EV6 GT is very dynamic. And even on paper, they're about $5,000 cheaper, $5,000 to $8,000 cheaper for MSRP. But man, if you look at the advertised prices, again, this is stuff that is dependent on you when you're watching this video. But if you're watching this video here in the summer of 2024, they're knocking like 20 grand, like advertising 20 grand off, and not just a single couple of dealers or something, like most dealers are offering like 20 grand off an EV6 GT, putting those, you know, right around $45,000 as well. And you know, at that point, you have the same fast recharge time, the same great platform, just less handling, a little less dynamic, and again, you still are losing out on the manual shifting, the sounds. The EV6 GT, you know, has kind of a little bit of a sound thing, but there's no manual shifting, and that maybe that will get an update for that down the road. But as far as these heavily discounted ones right now, you're missing out on that engagement once again. So it really comes down to how much that engagement is worth to you, you know. But with the EV6 GT, that and the little bit of extra handling and performance is going to be a 20 grand upcharge currently with advertised prices, you know, going from EV60T to this. So that's where, you know, right now the price premium is steep for this. I still would argue it's probably worth it, but you know, if you're someone that's a little more price sensitive, there's no shame in going for, you know, especially that EV60T again, because you have the same great recharge, same great platform, and much of the same great goodness as this, just, you know, a little bit less dynamic. At the end of the day, this is just by far the most engaging, the most fun EV that I have ever driven, and arguably, well, I can easily say it's the most fun car I've driven this year, and, you know, ranks up there as some of my favorite vehicles. I love it that much. I want one. Like, if I had this kind of money to spend and I needed a vehicle this size, with this kind of practicality, absolutely, this is what I would buy. And I say that with no reservations. There's nothing else that even gets close in my mind. This is the best, most exciting, fastest, craziest, practical, you know, four-door thing out there in my mind. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts on the IONIQ 5, and let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me here with this awesome vehicle to review for you guys today. I'm gonna miss this one. I do not want to give this one back. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.